purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
Motion.
The question is on the motion to table. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask for a roll call vote.
As for the yeas and nays?
Yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to table will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of the bill if arising without further proceedings in recommittal.
The House has been debating another short-term extension of 2011 spending through next Friday, April the 15th. It would cut $12 billion from current spending. It would also fund the Defense Department through the end of this fiscal year. The effort here by Democratic Whip Stenny is basically the fourth effort. This attempted a motion to recommit to instead get the House to pass what he's calling a clean CR without any budget cuts and without any part dealing with the Pentagon or defense spending for the rest of the year. This is a procedural vote related to that, and the first in this series of what we expect will be 4 votes on the House floor, which should include final passage of this short-term continuing resolution for fiscal year 2011, the 7th such bill. We spoke earlier today to a reporter who's been covering all of this. John Shaw, Market News International, joining us on the phone. How much support is this proposed one-week spending bill going to get later on in the final vote?
Well, I think when they vote on it finally, it's going to get almost unanimous, if not unanimous, Republican support, but virtually no and perhaps no Democratic votes. Republicans say this is a plausible way to keep the government funded while talks continue on the broader bill to fund government until September of this year. Democrats say it's an extraordinarily partisan stopgap bill. As you pointed out, it's for 1 week. It funds the Pentagon for the rest of the year. It cuts $12 billion, which Democrats say is very steep for just a one bill extension. It also includes a raft of policy provisions, which they say have been debated for years, sometimes decades, and to jam them into this stopgap bill they think is provocative and signals that the Republicans are bringing this bill forward largely to protect themselves politically if the government does shut down.
Well, over the last couple of weeks, since the last CR was passed, all of this talk about, on both sides, on reaching an agreement on spending levels through September. We weren't going to pass another continuing resolution. So how did Republicans decide now to pursue this 1 week extension?
Well, I think they are in active talks on the broader bill, but it's clear that these talks are going slowly, and I think this is largely a bill to give some, put it candidly, political cover to Republicans that if these talks do not reach an agreement, that they can at least say that they voted for a measure to keep the government running. So it's virtually everyone, including Republicans privately, say this bill is largely a measure to inoculate themselves politically if the government shuts down.
Well, the talks on the longer-term spending bill through the end of the year, those talks continue. But on the floor this morning, the floor of the U.S. Senate, Harry Reid said this short-term measure, this continuing resolution, was, quote, a non-starter. What's going to happen when this bill, if it passes the House, gets over to the Senate?
I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think the Democrats will probably substitute a clean CR along the lines that Mr. Dix was suggesting, just a clean 1 week extension. Republicans would certainly block that. And so I think this is part of the kind of tactical back and forth that is in play. But I think the main event continues to be the talks between the President, the Speaker, Mr. Boehner, the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, trying to reach a broad agreement on funding. It seems Reid was saying on the floor today that the parties are very close on a final bill, but he adds that there's still a lot of policy riders that have been put on the bill at the insistence of Republicans that are just unacceptable for Democrats.
And to be clear, the rule for this short-term measure would allow them, if they were able, to bring a longer-term measure to the floor as soon as possible, correct?
Right, yes. I think this is a place placeholder bill, and I think Republicans have been pretty clear that they have not argued that this is the perfect response, but they say that if the broader talks don't succeed, it's essential to have something in place to keep the government running beyond midnight Friday.
What about those talks? At least the visual ones. The leaders were John Boehner and Harry Reid were at the White House late last night, and now back again this afternoon, scheduled for a meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern. What does President Obama want to talk to him about?
I think he wants to see if a deal is done. I mean, it's doable. They've spent a lot of time together. They seem to have narrowed the differences. But I think they're at a point now where they really need to figure out if an agreement can happen. And everyone seemed to leave the White House last night saying that the momentum was positive, that they were narrowing the differences. But then Senator Reid came on the Senate floor about 10 o'clock this morning and said that he thought that things were moving in the opposite direction, that the Republicans were insisting on policy riders that were unacceptable. And this meeting later today, the White House seems to be a last-ditch effort to see if an agreement can be reached before the government begins to shut down on Friday at midnight.
Hey, John Shaw of Market News of International, thanks as always for your insight.
Thank you.
And since our conversation with John Shaw, it has been announced the president has issued a statement of administration policy that they will veto the latest continuing resolution as it stands now, although the White House spokesman Jay Carney briefing reporters at this hour, Susan Crabtree of the Hill tweets that the press spokesperson says that the president will, quote, support a clean CR. It's not necessary to start all over when we are so close. That's from the White House briefing that is underway, and should be underway also at the White House. Meetings with Harry Reid, the majority leader, and Speaker Boehner, invited to back down to the White House by President Obama. Well, news of that